Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to another video. So this is a long-awaited Astral Witchcraft tier list, but I do have some information before we get into this, right? So at least, okay, for 3.1.0, this is whatever that is true. But if you're watching this from a later version, let's say 3.1. whatever, 3.5 or 4. Whatever, right? This may not be that relevant anymore. Now, there are a few pointers that I want to point out before we begin, alright? So number one, Astral Witchcraft procs do reduce the buff and debuff durations of your Esper. So when you're using it, be careful that sometimes you're going to lose your buffs after triggering it. So for example, your standoff buff, or your invincibility buff, or your immunity buff. These three buffs, if you do lose it due to Astral Witchcraft procs, that can hurt a lot. And number two, it is not supposed to reduce the cooldown of your skills, but there is currently a bug that somehow does this, even though it doesn't work all the time, so it's kind of weird. And number three, you cannot proc Astral Witchcraft more than once within any natural turn. So if you take a turn, that will be a natural turn. If you proc an Astral Witchcraft, that will not be a natural turn. And number four, your passives can take their on-turn effects again, so long as they do not have cooldowns. So for example, Unky Chai, he is not going to benefit so much from Astral Witchcraft. I kind of spoiled myself over here. But Espers like Catherine, Espers like Heng Yue, they benefit a lot from Astral Witchcraft. Now, point number 5, skills used during the proc turn will go onto cooldown. So do take note that when you proc an Astral Witchcraft and you're using a skill, that skill will go onto cooldown. And this applies to passives with cooldowns as well. Now, point number 6, while this tier list is supposed to be objective on Astral Witchcraft, yet if there is another set that is absolutely better, I would just throw the Esper straight into D tier because it just makes so much more sense to run that Esper with something else rather than to even consider him running on Astral Witchcraft. Now, point number 7, this list only details whether the Esper is great with the Relic set or not. There is no comparison between Espers here. So for example, if an Esper is rated SS, that Esper may not necessarily be better than an Esper that is rated at a D. Now, point number 8, I have also updated the Relic build spreadsheet with the latest changes to the Relic Esper builds based on the update. So feel free to check it out on my Discord server or in the video linked in the description below. Okay, so without further ado, let's start with the rare Espers and then we will follow up with the epics and finally legendaries. So we're going to start off with Liuli. She has a very weak basic attack, so therefore D tier. Now Bardon also has a really weak skill 1, so D tier. Now as for Berenice, she is pretty good, especially for Fafnir, so I'm going to chuck her at B tier since her third skill doesn't actually break the shields, but I still prefer Windwalker on her. Now as for Brynn, you might be better off having her cooldowns in check, so you don't necessarily want her to throw her attack buffs and then throw her third skill immediately like that. You might want to conserve her third skill for a more important situation. Now as for Chalmers, I definitely prefer him on War Machine or even the Thor set. Definitely not so much on Astral Witchcraft, but the double proc could be helpful sometimes, but I generally prefer to play him as a one-hit wonder. Now next, as for Chang Pu, because of how dumb her AI works, this could actually work in her favor. Next, David, his skill 1 is definitely not worth rolling into. Now for Drew, this is a little bit more interesting, right? So we all know that Drew can hit 70k ignore defense damage, but the thing is that really necessary all the time? You're probably only going to use that effect on, like, let's say Chronos, right? Let's say a Ritual Miracles, or you're going to use it in PvP. Who in these stages have 70k HP? No one. So I definitely can see it possible to replace a little bit of his attack power in exchange for a chance for you to proc another skill, which allows you to clean up sometimes, or to land that extra defense break. Now next for Freddy, I would like to put him in D tier, but I think he is still okay in C tier. He kind of just wastes one single turn of his standoff buff, which is something that I do not like, but other than that, he does function pretty well with Astral Witchcraft. Now Hall, he does not need any more turns, so D tier. Helena, D tier as well. Ocean Waves exist. Ocean Waves is so much better for her. Jeanne, okay, so I'm going to chuck her at A tier because her first skill could really use some Astral Witchcraft procs. So the more you proc, the more chances you have to stun enemies, so that's a really good thing for her. Now as for Lauren, definitely D tier. This is not necessary at all. You're only mostly going to proc your Astral Witchcraft into her first skill, not so much of her second and third skill because you're going to use it in conjunction with each other. So there's really no point over here. Now next, Layla, the best set on her is not Astral Witchcraft. The best set on her is nothing. And as for Leon, D. Pure DPS all the way, man. Now Liao, our first S tier Esper for today. So he is great. Really great for that opportunity to use his second skill to absorb immunity from the enemy with a possibility of proccing Astral Witchcraft to gain yourself another turn to use your Devour on the enemy that had an immunity buff. So this is a really good synergy in my opinion. And as for Melanie, she is also going to join Liao in the S tier ranking because more turns means more AP control and a higher probability of you petrifying your target. Now, as for Q, this is definitely not the best set for him, but because all of his skills have debuffs, right? He has defense break on his first skill, he has attack break on his second skill, and he has a link debuff on his third skill as well. So since he has so many debuffs, I think gaining more turns can be a little bit helpful, especially since his first skill is a defense break. Now, Tang Yun, easy S tier, dude. More procs into more procs into more procs. Now, the thing is, Pursuit does not trigger more Astral Witchcraft procs. So you cannot hit once and then Pursuit and then Pursuit and then, oh, proc Astral Witchcraft that way. That doesn't work. You have to proc Astral Witchcraft on your first hit and then you Pursuit, and after the Pursuits are done, you will then take your extra turn. Now, as for Unky Chai, believe it or not, D tier. So a lot of people are going to assume that his first skill is going to trigger so many times during Astral Witchcraft proc, but that's not how it happens. And of course, I've tested this, but only when his turn has concluded will he gain the 25% AP push, which means that Astral Witchcraft does not do anything for him because he technically does not end his turn, he only ends his action. Next, Suhua, easily D. This is not the right set for her. And now Zelmer, A tier. Okay, so the only place that you would use Zelmer is probably going to be Fafnir most of the time, right? And with Fafnir, triggering that Astral Witchcraft is going to be huge on her because she's able to break more shields with her attacks. So with that, I think A tier is pretty good. Now Alexa, I would say A tier because her third skill into her second skill combo is pretty decent. And Alice, the new Esper over here, will make the first double S tier for us. Now this is a must-have for her, and especially Astral Witchcraft with Avatara. This is perfect because this triggers a lot of her first skill, which grants a lot of extra attacks from your allies. This is essentially a must-have. Next, for Anasidora, I generally prefer Ocean Waves on her over anything else. And now this is gonna be hilarious, man. I'm gonna put Arcana at S tier. Now, the reason is because he has a buff strip, and AoE buff strip on his third skill, right? He has the potential to remove immunity on all of the enemies, right? And if he procs Astral Witchcraft, he then gains another turn to use his second skill, which then absorbs AP and grants it to your allies and stuns the enemy as well. Now, this does not mean that he is going to be relevant with Astral Witchcraft. I might consider Arcana a great Esper if his second skill becomes an AoE attack, for example, so that you can steal more AP for your team. But I'm just saying that right now, his kit synergizes very, very well with Astral Witchcraft. Now, Asenath, D tier. So you only need your second skill to follow up after the enemy eats up all of your Lotus Marks, not immediately after you use your Lotus Marks. Now, Aurelius, B tier. I think it's pretty decent that he has a freeze on his third skill, which synergizes with his extra DPS on his second skill. Next up, Bonnie. So buff strip on her third skill into a stun on her second skill is excellent. Definitely S tier. Now next, Catherine, she's going to join the ranks of double S tier along with Alice. Now the thing is, she removes buffs on every turn that she takes, and that includes Astral Witchcraft turns. So that means that you can remove 2 of any kind of debuffs, including stuns, including like all kinds of disables, right? And at the same time, you're going to push the AP of your team, which means that if your team has a lot of debuffs, like let's say you're facing off Fafnir or probably a team that has a lot of poisons or something like that, you would remove 2 of these debuffs and then give your team so much AP push afterwards. This is a really good thing for her. Now, as for Celine, I'm going to put her at A tier. Now, the thing is, an Astral Witchcraft proc on her third skill is going to be super helpful, especially in Shadow Gale and Shadow Stream, because the third skill actually kind of like wastes one of her turns. So this way, she would be able to get more of her second skills up on time. Now, as for Chloe, definitely A tier. A double cleave on her kit is fantastic. Now, she has a tremendous amount of damage on her third skill, which means that I feel like she can forgo a little bit more of that DPS, you know, like maybe that 300 attack or so, and she could potentially be more reliable on an Astral Witchcraft proc sometimes. But I know some of you guys may want to put her at a B tier or C tier, but I personally feel like, you know, double cleave is a really interesting thing, and especially so for defensive lineups, because you know how RNG works on the enemy's team, right? Now next for Dahlia, D tier. Definitely Windwalker only. There is nothing else that you would want on your Dahlia except for Windwalker. And now Joza, D tier. I will assume Hades is probably the best set for him. And Ira, B tier, I would prefer her with Ocean Waves, not so much of Astral Witchcraft. But holistically, this makes sense because if you use your second skill to buff your ally with Rising Government's Watch, her taking extra turns afterwards through Astral Witchcraft is actually going to trigger more of the Rising Government's Watch effect, which is then going to give your ally a turn much sooner. Now for Breeze, C tier, this is not a useless set on him. And for Falcon, D tier, I would think Hades is probably better on him. Now Heng Yue, I'm going to put her at double S with Astral Witchcraft as well because her passive procs on Astral Witchcraft. So that gives you a lot of regeneration buff and a lot of cleansing on your team, which is very helpful. Next, Jacob, D tier, pointless and detrimental on him. And next for Jiang Man, B tier. This is not entirely useless on her, but I feel like there are just better sets out there. And Kara, S tier. Okay, so more poisons on her kit is always a good thing. So her kit, all of her attacks, right, lands poison. And each of her skills would land at least 2 poison stacks, if I recall correctly. So Astral Witchcraft is going to do a lot for her. Now Kaylee, I'm going to put her at an A tier. The only reason why I'm not putting her at S tier is because she doesn't strip immunities. So she has a freeze on her 3rd skill and an AP control on her 2nd skill, which is an excellent combo in my opinion. So definitely A tier. And next for Lauren, Snow Dowager exists. There is no reason why you want Astral Witchcraft on her. Now as for Lin Xiao, I would have to put her at S tier, and the reason is this. So she has an additional Tiger buff on her 3rd skill, which will not be used unless you trigger an Avatara proc or an Astral Witchcraft proc. So if you do not want to waste the additional buff, you could do well with Astral Witchcraft on her. Next for Lomian, very similar to Kaylee, very synergistic crowd control over there. So freeze followed with AP control and slow. That's really good. Now for Louis, I might consider him at a B tier, but I think A tier works for him as well because it really helps his damage output in Fafnir. As for Luo Yan, I'll put him at A tier as well because his 2nd skill comes around more frequently than his 3rd skill, so there are more opportunities for you to land more of his buffs, which is always a good thing. And as for Lin, very similar to Louis as well, same function, same role. Now Meredith, definitely Ocean Waves, you wouldn't want her on Astral Witchcraft. And as for Mona, I would generally prefer her on Hades just for fodder farming, but if you're considering her for pure DPS, I think a double AoE nuke is really good. So quite similar to Chloe, except that this time you are dealing a lot of AoE damage with lifesteal and AP absorption, so I think she's slightly better than Chloe in this regard. Next we have Nicole. I would put her at D tier because you do not want to waste her invincibility buff. After dropping that, you do not want to let go of it immediately, and I do find that she's either better on Windwalker or Ocean Waves. Now Pritzker, he's going to join the ranks of the double S as well. The thing is, a 3rd skill into his basic attack is very impactful. So if he lands a lot of stuns on his 3rd skill but you do not cooldown reset, for example, you can then use your 1st skill to follow up, do an AP absorption, and possibly increase cooldowns as well. Renzi is totally useless on this set. Sander is also totally useless on this set. Dude, just go with Windwalker or Ocean Waves. Next, Stewart is decent if you want to make the enemy sleep, but I would just put him as C tier. I don't think this set is where he belongs. God damn, I'm losing my voice. Now, Taylor. Okay, so he's definitely going to go into double S as well. He has an additional chance to take out an enemy, which will then grant him another turn on his passive. So Astral Witchcraft works really well for him. Now for Xiao Yin, this is a very interesting choice as well, S tier for sure. Now assuming he procs an Astral Witchcraft on his 3rd skill, he would then use his 2nd skill, which puts him back into stealth mode again. So in my opinion, that's really good. That's what a ninja truly is, and this is exactly what he's doing. Now, Xie 2E. Okay, so this is the Black Twin. He is definitely going to S tier because a defense break and a Seer debuff all at once is a big deal. Same goes for the White Twin as well. A stun on his 2nd skill into a stun elongation on his 3rd skill is a very big deal. As for Ahmed, S tier as well, more heals, more buffs. Now Bion Dina, this is going to be another double S character, right? Now a double strip on her passive with an Astral Witchcraft proc is very big for PvP. And to add, she has more than enough firepower right now to forego, like let's say a damage set for an Astral Witchcraft set, and she is still going to take out Donas any given day. So because of that, easily double S. As for Cecilia, use Snow Dowager instead, alright? This is not for you. Next we have Clara, double S as well. More heals, more buffs, but better than Ahmed. Now Donna, Hades only, alright? I've seen people try other things, it doesn't work. Next, Gabrielle, you can argue that you want to use your 2nd skill after using your 3rd skill for more AoE, but in my opinion, Windwalker Ocean Waves, that is probably the best. And as for height, same as Donna, only Hades. Now for Jiang Li, so a lot of you guys might have this question as well, which is, will he proc his Astral Witchcraft during Demon Mode? So that means you Demon Mode twice in one turn, right? You ignore defense twice on the same turn, and then pop right out into your normal mode. That does not work. You cannot trigger anything during your Demon Mode. You can only trigger your turn, which procs your own random attack. You cannot give him more attacks during his Demon Mode. Now Jin Yao, very similar to Catherine, but not as powerful because Jin Yao doesn't strip stuns, she doesn't strip disables, and she doesn't AP push. All she does is just heal, but it is still really good, right? So she's still gonna be S tier. Now Louis, A tier for me in my opinion. So with an additional proc into his basic attack that gives him lifesteal and a 20% AP push, that is a really good thing to have on your kit. Damn, now we can't see the rest at the bottom. Now for Liling, C tier, not that useful. And this is the part that I'm actually a little bit more excited about. So Lucas, this is probably one of the most broken Espers on Astral Witchcraft right now. Think about it, right? A 3rd skill AoE strip into a 2nd second skill AoE stun, or even just using your first skill multiple times, this is so broken on him. So because of that, easily double S tier, dude. This is easily a very good choice with Astral Witchcraft. And now next we have Nama. I'm going to chuck him at B tier. He can potentially gain 3 extra sun stacks by gaining another turn and using his normal attack, but this takes away from his one-hit wonder potential, so I might actually just prefer running him with like Thor or War Machine. And next, Ollie, D tier, do not waste your invincibility buff like that. Now next we have Ophelia, so this is useful when you throw your third skill into your second skill to clean up a weakened enemy, which then gives you a third turn afterwards. So because of that, there is some use for that, definitely S tier. Now Raven, this is a really good set on her right now with her AoE strip followed with an AoE buff blocker. This is quite powerful. As for Sally, she needs to take fewer turns, so this is a definite no-no. Sienna is going to go into B tier. This is decent for her basic attack procs. As for Tang Xuan, this is one of the better sets for him, similar to Ocean Waves. Now Tever, he is going to go double S for sure 100%. You can check out my Tever showcase video for more information on that, but he is essentially godlike with Astral Witchcraft. Now Tia is gonna go into S tier. There is great synergy on her third skill proccing into her second skill there, so I think it's very easy for me to put her in S tier. As for Tricky, dude, just stick to Zeus forever, alright? don't touch the Zeus Relic set. And Unas, Windwalker is the only way. Do not use Astral Witchcraft on him. And finally, we have Zora, who will be the final double S Esper for this list. So she has quadruple attacks. What else can I say, right? So that's it for the video, and I am absolutely losing my voice. This is why I don't tend to do tier list videos all that much anymore. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and definitely feel free to leave any of your feedbacks, any of your comments down in the comment section below, and I will read it and get back to you with any of the problems that you faced. So let me know how you feel about this list. What do you agree, what do you disagree with? But if you find that you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. It really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Dislyte content. Now with that said, this has been Daddy Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video.